Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for being here. Today I'm talking with Wendy Rose Williams. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Sharon.
Thanks for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure.
I love the Aurora Borealis behind you.
Yeah, we'll see if it stays behind me or if it starts to eat me. It's just so funny. Sometimes all of a sudden my face then disappears in it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll turn it off if it starts to eat me.
I'll let you know if it starts to eat you. All right, so I'll go ahead and read your bio for everyone before we start chatting. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Wendy Rose Williams is a past life adventure guide. She helps adults from around the world release pain, anxiety, and depression. Through techniques Wendy has learned working with some of the world's most renowned hypnotherapy experts, including Dr. Brian Weiss. She leads clients through a healing process. People are able to start living this life with joy and purpose when they release the energy that does not serve them. And you can also find her bio on her website, which I will have down in the description, www.wendyrosewilliams.com. Okay. All righty. So I'm really excited to talk to you. I know that in your bio, you didn't talk about it, but I know that you've had a near death experience, correct?
Yes, I had
Okay.
a near death experience in August of 1997. It would have been when I was 10 weeks pregnant with my youngest daughter.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. I just turned up the volume a little bit on you. So do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. So what happened was I was super happy, just so thrilled to be pregnant. I'd been an infertility patient for years, and I'd had two ectopic pregnancies. And we did have one daughter who was about 18 months old at the time. So what was happening was, I'm newly pregnant, just the end of the first trimester, but I'm having this incredible heartburn that just wasn't making sense to me. So I'd called the doctor's office several times, and they're just advising me, well, just take my Lanta. Every pregnancy can be a little bit different. But I was also having these very vivid dreams, and they were disturbing. They were precognitive, but I didn't know what that meant at the time. I didn't know that your dreams could prevent or could be predicting the future for you in a way that you needed to pay attention to. I just didn't understand that concept. And in the dreams, it was always these ships out at sea, and there was just terrible, violent storms. And the biggest image I got was things just ripping and tearing, like
Mm.
the masts were falling away and the winches were being ripped off. So it was all this violent ripping and tearing. And I didn't know that that was trying to show me what was going on within my own body. I didn't have an instinct for that. So I'm working at home alone, and my husband's at work, and our nanny is out with my daughter at the park. So I don't have a car, and I just cannot get comfortable. I've got this just agita from just hell, and I just keep trying to work, but then I go in the bathroom and I try and lay down, and I take my Lanta for the umpteenth time, and I'm like, I don't understand what's wrong. And I'm in the bathroom and I just have this searing pain.
Mm.
And I felt something tear. And I literally looked down and I knew it made no sense, but I'm like, someone just stuck a knife in me. It was the only way I could describe it. It was the worst pain of my life. And I pass out on the bathroom floor. And when I came to, the room was just glowing, and I could feel these large presences, these beautiful angels all around me. And they were really specific. And they said, you need to call for help right now, or you're going to go home. We need you to call for help immediately. And I knew what they meant by home was
Our
I was going
home.
to
Yeah.
drop my body and pass on. So I just said, oh my gosh, thank you for being here. This is amazing, but I can't walk. And they replied and said, you just have to get on your hands and knees. That's all we need you to do. We'll help you. And the minute I did that, it was like being carried to the phone. just because I made that little bit of effort. And I called my husband at work, and the miracles continue because I had never reached him at work before. And I didn't even think to call 911. I was just being very literal. They said, call for help. They didn't say call 911. So I called my husband, and he was home in less than 5 minutes because he worked very close to home, which was part of why I was thinking, okay, this makes sense, call him. And he was there, honestly, faster than an ambulance could have been. And I had just enough time to call the OBGYN office, and they were very specific, and they expressed concern and said, come here straight to our office, which was right at the hospital. And they said, do not park your car, call us immediately, and we're going to meet you down there with a wheelchair. We don't want you to walk. So it's like, okay. And I was admitted taken up to the doctor's office, and it was actually one of the midwives who started doing an ultrasound of me, and I could see her face change. I mean, she was just so professional, so reassuring, but she just kind of touched my arm and said, I'm going to go get one of the doctors now. And she left the room, and she came back in with another nurse midwife and with one of the physicians. So the room's starting to get pretty crowded at this point. And you can't see a thing on the ultrasound. And I'd had several ultrasounds before, and I thought that was very odd that you couldn't see anything. But there was so much blood pumping out. All you could see was that. So they couldn't really visualize any of the organs. And they asked me to give a urine sample. I couldn't even do that. And I could just sense that my organs were starting to shut down.
Wow.
So they took me by stretcher. They said, okay, we don't want to even sit her up in a wheelchair. Put her up, get a stretcher up here. So they got a stretcher and took me straight onto the floors and just transferred me into a bed. And I was not allowed to get out of the bed, even to go to the bathroom. And they're starting to, they asked me if I knew my blood type, which I did. And they're starting to get units of blood on board as fast as they can. And one of the strangest things was my abdomen was just rising and rising. And you could just see it. And it was really perturbing me because, I now look really pregnant, right, when I'm at risk of losing the pregnancy, which was, messing with my mind. Because I'm only 10 weeks pregnant. I don't even, pregnancy's not even showing at this point.
Yeah.
So I was in the hospital for a week. My hematocrit just kept dropping every day, and I'm in more the hematocrit, which is it's a measurement of how well you're doing of your blood oxygenation, etc. Okay. So the hematocrit just keeps going down and down and down. It's showing basically that I'm bleeding out. No matter how much blood they, hang and transfuse, I'm just losing it faster than they can infuse it.
Yeah.
So they start, and I honestly don't care. I'm just like, I'm having trouble staying conscious. I'm just like wanting to get out of my body so much because it was so painful. And they're giving me morphine, and the IV was actually bothering me as much as everything else. And they're like relocated it, and they've like put a board on my wrist, and they're trying to keep me comfortable, but I just cannot get comfortable. And it was about day 4, I think, that I finally said, okay, I'm willing to have the surgery, because they had been saying, you need to have surgery. We've got to get in there and do surgery. And it's like, well, what surgery? You don't even know what you're doing surgery for. So I was, resisting it. And the poor doctor, I mean, he's like madly researching and trying to find cases and, trying to look at, should I be transferred to the University of Washington, or should I stay there at the community hospital? And I didn't want to be transferred. So it's like, okay, let's go ahead and do the surgery here. And they did do the surgery, but before that happened, I had another near-death experience, because I consider that day at home when the first incident occurred. And what it actually was my uterus had ruptured.
Oh,
And it was the fundus, which is an aorta, is on the very top of the uterus, and that had burst. And that's what had felt like a knife being stuck in me. And I did have the sense then of those dreams of that like ripping and tearing that I hadn't understood. So that was my body trying to tell me, you know, you've got an organ that's going to rupture, but I
yeah.
just didn't know how to translate that.
Yeah.
So what happened the night before the surgery, I'd signed all the paperwork, and I was just not feeling great about it. Because of course I'm pregnant, and I'm like, you know, now it's like, gosh, now we have to have surgery too, on top of all these other assaults on my poor body and on the baby.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
and so the night before the surgery, I like finally relaxed because I'd made the decision. It's like, I just need to get the best rest I can and just, you know, pray for a positive outcome tomorrow morning. And when I finally just relaxed like that, I just went out of my body and I left my body and I felt so great because no more pain. And it's like,
Right.
yes. And I
Right.
finally felt like myself again. And I was looking back at my body in the bed and I was very disassociated. And I did have some humorous moments. I'm like, oh my goodness, she is whiter than the sheets. She just looks like a ghost. And then I did notice, I'm like, why am I calling myself she? But I really much more associated with my soul. And then I was out of that, you know, body that you're in
Right.
for X number of years. I much more related and was much happier being a soul because it was so comfortable and it just felt so great. And I also had this, I really just like burst out laughing as a soul. I'm like, my gosh, couldn't they have at least brushed her hair or washed her hair? She just looks like a mess. Because, you know, imagine, you know, you've been in this hospital bed for just days and like you can't get up and, you know, nobody was thinking about brushing my hair. And I hadn't seen myself. You know, there's no mirror. So the clarity to be able to see yourself like that was really interesting.
That's funny.
And once I stopped looking at my body and it was just like, oh, I'm exploring. This feels great. And I just floated up out of the ceiling, was my sensation, and just like left that hospital room of whatever floor I was on and went out of the roof of the hospital. And I could see this beautiful escalator and it was just all lit up. And it's like, oh, I am going up that escalator. And I do remember thanking the angels and my guides and saying, thank you for not making me walk through a tunnel. Because I've heard of these experiences of, you know, people having a near-death experience and you go through the tunnel. And
I
that
did.
just sounded too exhausting. I mean, I had no energy. I just nothing left to give. I was just below empty. I was bleeding out.
Yeah.
And so I got on this escalator and I had this sense of myself as this like white beach ball of energy was how I felt like I looked. And I remembered like leaning over on that, you know, moving rail on the escalator going, oh, this feels good. Because I didn't feel like I had any feet to like stand on it. So I'm like leaning on the rail and just going up and up and up. And it went on for a long time. And at the top of the escalator, the minute I stepped off it, all these wonderful people I loved, like my soul group, grandparents that had passed on, the angels that I had seen in my bathroom. There were about 20 of them. And they all came. It was like they were there waiting for me. They had known I was coming up. And they just gave me this huge hug.
Nice.
And
Nice.
to feel that unconditional love, it was like, oh my gosh, I just want to stay here forever.
Mhm.
And I also could feel that they were giving me energy, and it wasn't just the love. And one of the angels spoke to me, and he said, you have a choice. You know, we're so glad to welcome you home. It's absolutely fine that you're here. You've done nothing wrong. You're welcome to stay. And I'm like, I'm trying to like peek over them, but I was kind of feeling like I do now, like I'm more petite. I'm like, I can't see over them. It's like a lot of them are bigger than me, but there's just all this light around them, and I can sense the no judgment and the love. And I'm like, trying to like look over them, like, I want to be there, I want to be there. But I focused on what the angel said, and he said, if you take one more step here, you won't be able to go back. So we need you to settle down and just listen, because you need to make a clear choice right here and now. So I listened, and what he told me was, you are welcome to go back to your body. You will have a successful surgery. You will recover from it, and your baby will be fine. You will have this baby. So those were two really important points for me to know. But then he added to it, but it's going to be very hard. And it's going to be a very hard life for you for many years, because you're not on your path. So, of course, natural question. Okay, please, I want to do the right thing. I want to be on my path. I want to do what I'm supposed to be doing here. What am I missing? What am I not doing? And he just shook his head, and I'm looking at the others, and everyone's kind of like, zipping their lips, and they're like, no, we're not going to tell you anymore. And so I realized, well, this is a gift. I've been given this love, this energy, to feel this support that I'd never felt before, and to know that I'd be all right, and to know that I was going to have the baby, and the baby was going to be all right. And I wanted to go back for my toddler. So when they asked me and said, do you want to go back to your body? I said, absolutely. I'm going back for my children. It just was a really clear-cut answer. Yeah. So I went back, and it was very easy. It just kind of like floated back into my body. Had a successful surgery the next day. It was many, many hours. It was 2 OBGYN physicians, whom I'll always be grateful to. And they had done a lot of consulting with the UW and with other locations, but they were able to repair the uterus. And
nice.
I recovered at home for 6 weeks. I was so weak, I couldn't even walk up the stairs to our bedroom upstairs. I had to stay downstairs and just try and regenerate and get enough blood supply going again, because they estimated I lost 3/4 of my blood that week, and they just were not able to pump that amount in. I think that's why it was so much pressure on my arm, was the amount of blood that they were trying to flow back in. I found really uncomfortable. Must have had that valve on full. Yeah. And so that was what happened. So I go back to work, and within about 6 weeks of being back to work, I'm laid off. And it's a job I love. It just comes out of the blue. I've had these great performance evaluations. I've been there over 3 years, and I hold the health insurance for the family. So now I'm pregnant, no job, and we have no health insurance for any of us. And how and where am I going to deliver, without health insurance, or where am I going to find a new job? Literally a week to the day after I'm laid off, my husband comes home, and he says, and I could just see just his energy the minute he walked in the door. I said, what's wrong? And he said, I have something really hard to tell you. And he owned his own company at that time. And he said, we've just gone to payless paydays. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? I don't even know this term. And he said, well, there is not enough income coming in. We just had to do a huge layoff of almost everyone. And we're trying to get the company sold, but we've got to stay in business because we have to keep going on to work, because we've sold contracts we've got to deliver on. So there's no option of not delivering that work, or we're going to, really ruin our reputation. So I'm going to continue going to work, but I won't be getting paid. I'm like, oh, great. That's the only thing better than being out of work, is to go out to work and not be paid. So I'm just looking at him, like struggling to take this in, because I can't like quite comprehend it. And I was like, okay, so you just need to go ahead and file for unemployment. You know, my claim is being processed and we'll have your unemployment. He's like, I don't qualify for unemployment, Wendy. I'm self-employed. Therefore, there is no unemployment. So I'm like, it's like the hit after hit after hit just, you know, kept coming. And so we were in a situation very quickly where we were looking at losing our home and having our new minivan we just purchased, because we were going to have a, you know, a baby and a toddler that we just purchased. We're looking at having those things repossessed. And we were very fortunate. Bank of Mom, my mother, saved us, and she sacrificed a lot and stepped forward and helped us financially until he was able to get his company sold, which took quite a few months. It literally sold right when our daughter was being born. So quite a few months later. And I looked for a job, but I was just not in the headspace and getting, you know, more and more visibly pregnant and just not feeling well, not doing well.
Sure.
So, you know, didn't find a position until after I gave myself a maternity leave of 3 months, and I went back to work when she was 3 months old. So.
Wow, quite the story. Where they weren't kidding, huh? When they said that that you were going to, it wasn't going to be easy.
Right, exactly.
That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that, Wendy.
Well, thanks for asking the question. But I felt so blessed because years later, when I started to hear more about other people's NDEs, I heard a lot of stories of people not feeling they had a choice and feeling like they got shoved back into their body or told, it's not your time, go back, you have to go back. And I really felt loved and respected, and like I was given a very respectful choice.
Yeah.
I know you've had an NDE, Sharon. Did you feel you had a choice or didn't have a choice?
Well, I've actually had two, and one when I was 9 years old, and when that happened, I was it was abuse to a family member, and he was and I died, and so I remember leaving my body. I just remember that peace, right? The pain is gone, and there's just so much peace. And I was met by light being Yeshua. I was met by Christ, and I recognized him, and that's, you know, who I resonate with. And I wasn't ever really religious, but I recognized him at that point, and he tells me, you know, come my child, come. He called me my child, and he says, you don't have to go back.
Old.
I know, I was 9. Yeah. He says, you don't have to go back. You can, you know, you've suffered enough, because it was ongoing. And I said, no, I want to go back. I just started, you know, I don't want to have to start over. And so then so we spent a little time together, and then I went back into my body and went through that pain. And then in 2001, I had another one. And in that one, when I died, I popped out of my body. And I remember the humor. You were saying the humor there, and I saw my body, and it was, and I write about it on my website. But I was run over fell out of the back of a bus, and my trailer ran over my head, and so I popped out of my body. And I remember, and there's that peace again, right?
Yes.
And just knowing, I just knew, okay. And there's my body laying in the road, and I'm thinking, oh wow, because what had happened was this was in Texas, where I lived in San Antonio area. We went tubing down the Guadalupe River with a bunch of girlfriends for one of their birthdays, and I fell out of the back of the bus because they packed us on the bus as they were driving down the road. And I remember thinking, and it was at the end of the day after we were done, oh, we had such a great day, you know, everything, we all had so much fun, it was such a great day, and then here I go and die on them. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, oh, and then it's going to ruin their day. I was thinking, this is really going to ruin their day.
It sounds so crazy, but if you haven't had these experiences, you can't, it can be really hard to relate to. It can sound macabre. But yes, it's just, because you know you're an eternal soul and you
Right.
just feel so great that yes, you do see the humor in just the craziest things. You're like, oh, how could I ruin their day, their perfect
I know.
day? How dare I fall on the back of a
I
bus and
know. I
get
was
run
like, this is,
over?
I know, because I was like, I knew that it was over, and it's just is really going to ruin their day, you know? And I didn't have that attachment like you were talking about. I
Right.
didn't have that attachment. And so I remember going down the tunnel because you mentioned the tunnel. And I did, and I more floated down the tunnel. And I remember
Okay.
seeing, yeah, I remember seeing, well, at first I saw my dad, my stepfather, but I remember seeing relatives on each side of the tunnel.
Oh my.
And yeah, and relatives, I recognized them, but I also recognized relatives that weren't here in this physical lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had the same experience. I sensed that my dad's parents were there, so my paternal grandparents, but I never met them because they
Yeah.
died before I was born.
Yeah, but you just know them. You know them.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this I see this sun, this bright, bright sun, and again I talk about it on my website, but and it's just so bright, and I'm not all the way through the tunnel, but I see off in the distance this sun, and a figure comes out of the sun. I mean, it's just beautiful, bright. It doesn't hurt my eyes. It's just so gorgeous. And
Mhm.
that figure is Yeshua or Jesus. And so I recognize him. I just run to him. And you were asking about, the choice to go back. And boy, I always get emotional talking about this. And so, and we embraced, and I mean, I just felt that love that you can't describe. You can't
Mhm.
describe. And he did tell me, he said, you really have to go back. You're not finished. And because this was in 2001, it wasn't, it was not that long ago. So you know,
Right.
he knew that I would not want to, you know,
Leave it
finish what
unfinished.
finish, yeah,
Mhm.
because like you, I wasn't on my path yet, right? The path the reason why we're here for lots of reasons, but in order to help the planet and moving into this space where we're at now, and so I said no, no, I want to stay with you. I want to stay home,
Right.
but but
Right.
and he took me on a journey, which said you'll have all this, you just got to finish this one. And so yeah, and then boom, I'm back in my body after all this, and then
Oh my
feeling
goodness.
pain again. Yeah, I
How
know, isn't it?
traumatic. That's unbelievable.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, and it happens within a few seconds, I guess, or
Right.
a minute or
Because
two, or
time
whatever it
is
was.
different on the other side. It's like there is no time and it's continuous at the same time. It's
Right.
just we don't have the vocabulary for it because it's so different. Just like there's colors that you can see at home that you don't have a word for them because we don't
Sure.
have those colors on earth.
We aren't able to see them. Yeah.
Right, right.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. And the light beings that, I mean, you just can't, how do you describe that amount of love and that feeling? We don't have that here.
Right, right.
It's,
Because most love, it's conditional. It's
mhm.
like we may not realize it, but we don't experience. So I just feel like that's a big goal is to really give love unconditionally
Right.
because then we're gonna receive more of it. And we'll level up in this game that we're all playing.
Totally. Totally. I like to express the love that I feel, or that we, that the angels, that, Christ, or, anyone that you resonate with in that manner has for us, excuse me, as like maybe what we would feel for our child,
Mhm,
but 100 times more.
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
it's unimaginable. Yeah.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
you sent me a couple of things that you would like to chat about, and I'd love to hear your story about what happened at Mount Shasta.
Sure. Mount
Yeah.
Shasta, California is such a unique high vibrational place. It's exactly 555 miles south of me in Seattle. And I've been there twice. And the first trip that I went on, I went down with several girlfriends, and we rented a lovely location called the Angel House. And our very last night there, we had the privilege of doing a ceremony with a local native shaman.
Mhm.
And we were doing ceremony to help balance the four elements because there had been drought in California for many years, for several years. And we wanted to pray for divine right rainfall. So through the spiritual teacher that several of us had in common, she knew the shaman and referred us. And so we were going to do this ceremony. So he's driving his truck and we're going to this location that he's chosen. And I'm from out of town and I can't find my way out of the paper bag anyway. So I'm just like following him in my car. And I've got, several people with me in my car, and he's got another shaman with him in his truck. But he's driving like, the typical young guy in a truck would drive, and I can like barely keep up with him. And I'm like starting to feel concerned about the road. I'm like, this road is not even a road at this point. It's like so washed out. And I'm thinking AAA is never going to come get me. And we probably don't have phone service. So I asked friends, I said, will you check if you've got any bars on your phone? And they're both like, oh no, we're way too far in the woods. I'm like, great. So
Yeah.
I just prayed. I'm like, okay, if you want me to keep following, please just keep my SUV in one piece here so that we can get in and get out. Because I really was thinking, am I going to break an axle here? Because we're like going over these rocks and just washed out road.
Yeah.
So we get to the parking place and I'm like going, phew, like wiping the sweat off my forehead from having made this drive, which took a lot of trust. And he had built all these stones and made them into a big circle. And he made a small fire pit in the middle of it because as a native shaman, he was allowed to light just a few, but we were really going to make sure that fire was out because it was tinder dry, and also not to have people seeing smoke and, getting concerned. But as we're looking at this circle, I'm like, we're all immediately looking at this tent that's right on top of it. It's like pitched like inches off our, what's obviously a sacred circle. And so we're like saying to each other, did the shaman, maybe he stayed here overnight to like, protect the space, etc. Whose tent is that? Is the natural question. And I'm looking at this tent because you couldn't find a tent like this if you tried. It looked like it's this old canvas, just, they don't make them anymore like that. This thing is ancient.
Wow.
And so we're looking around a little bit, trying to figure out, because he said, no, we asked the shaman, he's like, no, that's not my tent. I have no idea how that got here. So we're looking around and we're all saying, well, whose tent is this? Do we go ahead and have our ceremony? So we start unloading things, from our cars that we brought with us. And we're all kind of like looking in one direction as we're asking whose tent it is. And this man, this being just steps out of nowhere. I mean, he wasn't there and he suddenly was there. And he looked like he went with the tent. He looked like Indiana Jones, met a Boy Scout in like the 1920s. Rumpled, old-fashioned. I mean, the clothing just looked so uncomfortable. And we're like kind of looking at him like, where did you come from? And he's looking at us and saying, why are you here? So we're like taking the measure of each other and we have this kind of uncomfortable conversation. And he said, well, I'm here to protect this space. And I was sent here to hold sacred space. And I agree with what you're doing. And I'm hearing that you're the right people to do this. So I'm just going to sit here at my campsite and observe and watch. And we said, okay, because we were not going to invite him in because we had, one person was going to be fire, one was going to be water, one was going to be earth, one was going to be air. And we had the two shaman facilitating. And also, it wasn't a comfortable thing. So he's directly behind me, which makes me even more uncomfortable because I've got this strange stranger right behind me. And then, and I just asked my guides, I said, okay, keep me safe. Should we proceed? And I'm hearing from my guides, yes, go ahead. And we all agreed, go ahead. And I asked my cat Midnight, who I've spent many lives with, I asked him to come in his pure soul form. And he's usually a black panther or a very large guard dog. So I just asked him to come in, and I could feel him start walking behind me. And two of my friends confirmed it, and they said, oh yeah, we saw a huge black panther come in between you and
Nice.
the other guy,
Nice.
just in case, because it made me feel more comfortable. And we went ahead and we had the ceremony, and it was wonderful. And when we were just finishing up, my spiritual teacher said to the gentleman, thank you for coming here from the 32nd dimension and holding the space for us, because I know we couldn't have performed this ceremony otherwise. Thank you for holding the space. And he just, kind of bowed to her, and she bowed to him, and that was it. And I bet he went right out through that portal.
32nd dimension.
It was crazy, but he acknowledged it, and it wasn't like we were going to get to chit chat. It felt like it was such a privilege to get to know even that much. And we chatted about it later and said, do you think the poor guy arrived in like his spacesuit clothes, or like naked, or had to like scramble to find clothes?
Some clothes, yeah.
Because he felt like such a time traveler, and it felt like he'd had to go like rummage in someone's attic, or find these clothing and find this old tent. And he'd been there holding the space. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, to say the least. So do you feel you stepped into another dimension too? I mean, I would imagine. I've been to Shasta, and when I was there, I felt like I stepped into the 5th dimension in a certain area.
Shasta's very different. I mean, everywhere you move and everything you do, it's all shifting. And I've taken photos of people there, and then they're not on my camera. They're not on the phone. And I'm like, okay, I wasn't supposed to get a picture of that. I saw white calf buffalo there.
Wow.
Like the Hopi prophecy. And I was so excited. And I took pictures, no pictures. I took pictures of a couple in a canoe, just because it was this beautiful lake. And it just gave it some good contrast to have the canoe and the people in the front of it, not on the film.
That is crazy.
So I know. So Shasta's very unique. I've seen spaceships come in. Yes, they hide in those lenticular clouds. And the scientists will say, oh, those are just lenticular clouds. Well, that's fine. It's whatever your belief system is. But yes, it's a very unique place.
We know better.
Well, I find it really hard to stay grounded there. So totally. I go there, and I've got just like pockets full of dark crystals. I've got them stuffed in my bra, and I like still can like hardly stay grounded. I lose every one of them while I'm there. They're all just gone.
When's the last time you were there, Wendy? Because I understand it's changed quite a bit.
Last time was 3 years ago.
Okay.
So it may be easier now.
Did you feel a shift when you were there? Because I understand that the energy has shifted, not for the better, recently.
I've heard the opposite. The first time I went would have been, I think it was 20, and I'm sure every experience is valid. It's like we're all creating our own new earth in so many ways.
And it might be certain areas too.
Sure,
I've heard
absolutely.
from remote viewers that
absolutely.
Well, I'm talking about inner Shasta, Telos.
Sure. And I did have an experience with Telos it was the first time that we went. So the first time I went with friends, and I was there an entire week. And the second time I went back, I'm like, that was too long for me. The energy is so intense there. I mean, it's so beautiful, but I have so many experiences while I'm there, and I dream so vividly. I get up in the morning exhausted, because it's just
Yeah.
like download, download, download. So the
Right. Yeah.
second time I went alone. So I went for a shorter period of time, and I was more specific with my guides. You need to keep me grounded. And it was about an hour out from it. It was like, whoa, I can feel it. I'm like vibrating up too high. So I had to pull off the road. It's like I need to find a gas station and just drink water, get gas in the car, I have to ground and eat
Mhm.
something. So I was eating a power bar. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, we're going in now, but you've got to keep me grounded.
We're
It's
going
just,
in.
yeah, just really, really interesting. So I was there, I think 3 days the second time. And the second time I went, I just went to all lakes. I went in with no agenda. I went in alone, had just a beautiful little Airbnb I stayed in, and just went wherever my guides asked me to go.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that because I was disturbed to hear information that it might not, that there might be some negative beings that are there.
Well, I think there's
Yeah.
lots of them.
Yeah.
It's a power vortex. I mean, I see it as the root chakra.
Hmm.
And that's what my teacher told me why we went on that washed out road. She said that road was specifically washed out once we chose our site so that other people wouldn't go there,
Oh, wow. Okay.
except for he who steps through the portal.
Yeah.
He didn't need a car.
Yeah. Totally.
So, I think because there's such power and such amazing energy there. I mean, energy is neutral. It's how are you going to choose to use it?
Sure. Sure.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
but I did
Yeah.
have
So
a,
it, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
I
I was
did,
just gonna say, so it could depend on where you're at, what area
I
you're
think
in.
so,
Yeah.
absolutely. So the
Yeah.
first time I went, I was asked to open some portals, which I had never done before. And I just
Hmm.
did that very carefully, with a lot of, um, with a lot of confirmations with my guides that I was meant to do that.
Hmm.
And with a friend there, kind of watching my back. And it just all sounds so weird and like subterfuge. It's like this is not my normal life, but when you're
Not to
asked to
me.
do something very holy and it's really important to do, but you're also told there's a lot of danger involved and be very grounded and pay attention to what you're doing. I pay attention.
Hmm.
So when you're given good advice, follow it.
Totally. Yes.
So
Yeah, I always trust spirit and trust my guides before,
yes,
anyone else.
absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. But yes, very magical place. And I was able to go to Telos the first time. We did a
Hmm.
day retreat with a gal who lives there and is kind of a mountain, mountain guide. So we went on a pilgrimage day with her, and she was able to take us to some beautiful sites we would never have found on our own. And one of them was to meditate and to go within Telos, and I found a past life as a preschool teacher there.
Oh, nice.
That was super neat because it wasn't what I expected at all. And I kind of panicked when I got up to the front of the classroom because I'm looking at these adorable little faces, and they're like 2 to 4 years old, most of them. But it's this Star Trek moment because they're from all different galaxies. And I'm thinking, what do I teach them? And how do we communicate? And the two things I was told to do was, we'll just refresh them on telepathy, and you'll just be able to speak to them via telepathy, and then they'll learn how to do it in the body because they're not quite used to their new bodies because they're little preschoolers, and just teach them astral travel from the body. So those were our two preschool subjects.
That's what we need
They're
to be teaching here.
I know that in meditation.
Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, but just
Totally. Yeah.
very, very amazing place.
Yes, it is for sure. So I know that you in your bio you talked about past life therapy type of work that you do, right?
Yes,
I'm so
yes,
happy to hear that because I don't think enough people do that, and that's kind of the crux of my work as well with mediumships and
yes,
yeah, and I
yes.
see how it helps so much. And if we all knew how to do it, and if we all knew how it helps, I think that our world would be, I know our world would be a lot better place. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Because I think that past life energy that's just buried in our subconscious and we're not aware of it. I mean, name a person you know who doesn't have some funky fears and phobias that are not, they just don't make sense. They're not from this lifetime. They predate this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people don't understand. And it's still affecting them. And it might not be, the typical fear of spiders or water or heights. It can be of intimacy. It can be of authority. That's a big one for a lot of people. Just from experiences they've had before. So to be able to find those lifetimes of origin during
Mm-hmm.
a session or
Mm-hmm.
spontaneous recall, because it can just come to you. You can be triggered by going to a place or meeting a person or seeing a movie or a TV show, and just being able to release that and just know, well, that was then and this is now, and I can let that go.
Totally.
That just really makes such a difference for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, and you might agree with this that a lot of times well, pretty much every time I work with a client, I'll tell, and we work on past life stuff. I'll tell them nothing's new. We just keep we come here with all this stuff. Yeah, that we're just repeating these programs, these cycles that we haven't cleared, haven't healed yet,
Right.
and that's the main reason, what I understand, and you might agree, I hope that or uh that's kind of one of the main reason why we come back.
Well, I do agree. And I think we're here to reframe it in a more
Mm-hmm.
positive way and to see it from a higher plane.
Sure.
Because when you describe a horrific NDE like you had, and to just say, what could be the purpose in that?
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you found a lot of purpose and peace with it. And I certainly did with
Yours
mine
too.
too.
Mm-hmm.
And just being able to understand, well, why did this relationship end that I didn't want to end? Looking for those silver linings and looking for the blessings. And yes, it
Right.
can take us years,
Yeah.
to be enough on the other side of it to be able to laugh about it and just say, well, this is so important that that happened, or I never would have, taken the next step. I
Right.
mean, I certainly was not looking to be laid off
Mm-hmm.
in 2017. That was not on my to-do list. It was in a job I loved of 10 years. I planned to retire from there. Single mom, two girls in college. You going to stick your arm up and say, please lay me off? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I needed to be having my own practice full time. I needed to be writing and working with clients and training and doing sessions and having sessions, and that wasn't happening. So I got the rude little push that you
That's
need
so
to have.
funny. I mean, not funny, funny, but I can totally relate because to you saying that, because I was at a corporate job for 11 years. Yeah. And I was doing this work part time after my
Yes.
NDE. And then I got that rude awakening because I figured on retiring from that company. And all of a sudden, I'm let go. And I'm like,
Right.
where did this come from?
Yeah, we've had so many similarities, Sharon.
I know, right? Totally. Yeah. So it's amazing how spirit works, and
Yes.
it's always for the best,
It
always.
is. It is. And I was
Mhm.
fortunate because I was told in a reading about 6 months before the layoff came, I was told you should start to prepare for a layoff.
Wow.
So that was good to know because it kind of allowed me, mentally and emotionally to prepare, as well as I physically cleaned out my office. So when it was time to go, I was already down to one box,
Yeah.
my personal things. I just it was a lot less traumatic, because I was given that little heads up that might be coming.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I had intuitions that it wasn't right for me anymore and that I should start doing my, focusing on my practice full time. But
Right.
when you're in that comfy zone, it's kind of hard to, take that leap. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I'm like,
Absolutely.
I only have, 4 or 5 years, 5, 6 years, whatever it was. I can't remember
Sure.
how long ago, to retirement. So I'll wait till then. But
Sure. And I
yeah.
was also waiting. I was waiting till my daughters were out of college.
Hmm.
So, but instead we got to all dig deep and just really, find our strength and just say we're all going to be okay. And you girls absolutely need to stay in college, and we're just going to figure this out.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you just develop the resiliency, and for me it was learning to heal some fears that I had around a lack of financial flow. I mean, that's why I got to have the big lesson. That was the push me out of the bus,
Hmm.
was
That's
to,
huge.
to deal with that. And then I had an interesting car collision about 2 years ago. And that one was very surprising to me because I drive very carefully, and I'm just, very cognizant of making sure I'm grounded, and, I truly drive with the angels. And I'd
Hmm.
specifically said, before I pulled into the parking lot of the location where I was going, I'd specifically said, hey, it looks like there's just one space left in the lot. Should I take that and park there? And I was hearing clear yeses. So I pulled in going, woohoo, yay, lucky me. I got the last spot. And when I went to pull out a couple hours later, it was very hard to see. All I had to do was make a right, but it was very hard to see because there were parked cars along the street.
Mm.
And the two cars that were to my left were just these big trucks. So I'm trying to see like through their through their windshields and through their glass. And I again asked the angels, can I pull out? And I pulled out, and boom, I get it's the hardest hit I've ever taken in a car
Wow.
collision. And 3 out of the 6 airbags went off, and it was like boom, boom, boom. I mean, it's just explode. They literally explode. I'd
Wow.
never had that happen before. And it was the two across the front, and it was the one on my driver's side because I got hit on the front left. So that was the 3 that went off. I can't see a thing. And I'm just spinning and spinning and spinning, just trying to get my foot on the brake, trying to get my foot on the brake. And I'm just praying, please don't let me hit anyone. That's all I ask at this point, is let this be for a reason and don't let me hit anyone. Because there were so many people walking on the sidewalk, because I was at a dog rescue event
Mm.
um, at a microbrewery, and there were people eating outside too. And I sensed that my car had gone back over the sidewalk. So I ended up way back in the parking lot. I was right on the front stairs of the place.
Wow.
So it really was, very, very frightening. But, my soul did go up and say, okay, please preserve everyone around me and have this be for a reason. So many people came and helped. I mean, certainly I had to call the police, and I knew I was going to be judged at fault because I'm the one pulling out of the parking lot into traffic. And the police were just so nice, and the tow truck driver, and all the people that came and helped me help the other car, and the other car also hit a parked car. So it really was a big collision. But it went incredibly well. And I got home and I'm like, me and the angels have some talking to do.
Yeah. they were they asleep at the wheel?
I want to understand this.
Mhm.
And so, I'm taking some aspirin, and I've got like the wheat bag on my neck because I'm like, this feels like whiplash. And, I'm like
Yeah.
healing my body. And I'm like, okay, Lucy, you got some explaining to do. I know this was for a reason. This was very, very conscious. And first they were trying to kind of like lighten me up, and they're kind of laughing. And that humor that we spoke of, and they're kind of laughing, and they're like, well, Wendy, we needed to get you to buy a new car, and you would not have bought a new car. like, what?
Oh, that's funny.
That is not sufficient explanation. I'm very happy driving my paid off for years car that's 12 years old. I'm happy as can be with it. And then they got more serious and they said, we did this to allow you to resolve your issues with authority. And I said, oh, because I had to call the police. And I had to call the police. And I honestly, I felt nervous saying where I was. So I wasn't giving the name. I'm just giving the 911 operator the address. And she's like, well, what's the name of it? Is it a house? Is it a business? I'm like, it's across from Fred Meyer. And it's like, and I don't want to say I'm at the Hellbent Brewery. Who wants to say they just had an accident? Because I thought they're going to come with like breathalyzer. I'm like,
they're going to
into
think
this,
that,
I'm going into this flipped out place. And I know there's no issue with alcohol because I'm super, super careful. And I'd had lunch first and I'd had one beer and then I'd waited 3 hours before driving.
But you were feeling that.
Yeah, but it just felt like this pressure of, you know, being judged and what were they going to think and, you know, that sort of thing. And I had to deal with court and I had to deal with my insurance company to get the car, you know, cashed out. And I didn't know what was going to happen with the other insurance companies because 2 other cars are involved. So yeah, it was a lot of dealing with authority. It all went beautifully. It was amazing. And what my guide said to me when I had a past life regression after that, the one I had most immediately after that collision, they said this was to rewire you to expect the best rather than to expect the worst.
Oh, beautiful.
And we did it by choosing to heal your issues with authority combined with finances, because I also was starting to flip out. How do I buy a new car? You know, I'm like not working. I've just got this fledgling business and, you know, so they created this perfect storm. So it was very guided, very guided.
Yeah, we like to think we're in control, but we're not. Right?
No, we're not. But boy, did it turn out well. I, at that point, purchased a set of Oracle cards I love called The Universe Has My Back. Because I realized I had some work to do in that area of just always believing that I'm loved and cared for. Does that mean everything goes the way I want it to? Of course not.
Yeah.
But
hey, that's how we learn, right?
Exactly. That's how we learn.
That's how we grow.
That was something else the angels said to me. They said, you're here for experiences. We just gave you another one. Yes. And I'm like, wow, could do with a few less of those.
Yeah. That's what they always tell me. It's all about experience. It's all about experience.
I know.
You know, what's funny is my sister and I, we have a business called the Orb Sisters together.
Okay.
And yeah, because we take orb photos and all that. And, you know, we've been starting to put videos on because we like people to understand what we get. Yes. But we created a Oracle card deck and from our photos, some of our photos. Okay. And one of the cards is, and I wrote the sayings and we worked on the deck together, and it was just it felt so good to write these, to bring these messages on, you know, and bring them together with the photos. Yes. One of them is the universe has your back.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I know. I love it when I pull that card.
Right, absolutely. Because we may not understand at the time because we're just human and we're just seeing this like tiny little perspective. We're kind of down, you know, at that little worm view. We don't have the big bird's eye view. Totally.
Yeah. And so it always comes up whenever I need it and whenever we need it. I'm sure when you pull your cards, the messages are right there. Yeah.
They are. Yeah. They really are. Yeah. The Oracle cards, I just enjoy them a lot. I feel like the guides really speak through them. It's always the message I need right at that moment.
Good. So Wendy, it's been a joy, and we're going to do this again because I know you have a lot to share. We didn't get to a lot of the things that we wanted to talk about. So it's been, my batteries are so perfect timing. So I need to close and say goodbye for now.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me as your guest.
Oh, well, thank you for being here, and we'll have to do this again. And
That
I
would be
really
wonderful.
appreciate. Yeah. Okay. All right. And thank you, everyone who came here today to watch. And I'll say goodbye. Okay.
Happy New Year, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Yes. Happy New Year.